some weeks ago, they were like, oh, what's it like to step into Hoda shoes? I'm like, those aren't shoes you step into. Like I've taken those shoes and we've put those shoes on a shelf because that's an impossible feat. I'm just gonna wear my shoes and keep my fingers crossed. Libby Least and Tom Mazzarelli, they run the Today Show. Libby made an appointment. She was like, we need to talk to Craig, like, you know, this morning. I was like, oh. And they come into my office, which they never do. And in our line of work, when both of your bosses come in together, it's either really good or it's really bad. They both said something, and then Libby says, she's like, I think you're probably aware there's some changes happening around here, and we've talked to everyone, and we would really be like, we'd be excited to offer you the role. I was like, what role? They're like co-host of the Today Show. Like, we would like for you to succeed Hoda. It was just 20 plus years of like memories and dreams, and I get all weepy. And then, Libby gets weepy. And even Maz, who's typically devoid of emotion, he gets a little weepy, and we all hug. And and then after that, they swore me to secrecy. And they're like, you can't tell us all. I was like, what do you mean? So they were like, oh, yeah, Lindsay. I was like, well, what about my mom? Your mom, but tell your mom not to tell anybody at church. And so I called Linz, and then I called Mom, and that was it. Hoda was actually the second person I heard from after I found out that I was getting the gig. She said it's gonna be the ride of a lifetime, to take it all in, to try to be as present as much as possible, which sounds, of course, like Hoda. But Hoda used to always remind me, we get to do this. Because there's some days where, the kids have been up late, or you've been on a shoot, or you're just dragging, and, you might complain about something, or you're just having a rough day. And she would always look at me and remind me in that Hoda way, we get to do this.
Craig Melvin is the new anchor of the Today Show.
I'm generally not a nervous guy, but I've never done this. And so I don't know, I'm nervous about, I'm nervous, I'm anxious, but at the same time, it's the most, and by the way, I don't really do excited either. Like, it's just, I'm not someone who's excitable. It's the first time I've been this excited about anything outside, like the day I got married and the birth of my 2 children. Like, I am beyond stoked. And one of the things that excites me most about it, Savannah Guthrie. Like, sitting next to Savannah every morning, and we've become dear friends over the years. Like, our children are almost the same ages. Like, we hang out outside of work, and she has just been the most gracious and generous of champions, even before the job stuff. So like, going on this adventure with her is something that I'm also really excited about. So growing up, I thought maybe I'd be a lawyer. Maybe I'd go to law school. When I was in college, I spent a month and some change on Capitol Hill. I thought maybe I'd work in DC. I studied government at Wofford College. That was my major. But when I was 16 years old, actually, I may have been 15. Anyway, 15 or 16, there was a commercial that came on in Columbia, South Carolina, and they were looking for an Our Generation reporter. And they had like 3 or 4 high school students who would work with the producer, and they would create these stories that would appear on the local evening news that were designed to get like more young people watching the news. I had like no experience. I was like, oh, that'd be cool. I drove my dad's 1973 Pontiac Le Mans to Richland Fashion Mall, and I auditioned with the blessing of my parents. And then I get a call one day, and they're like, hey, we liked your tape. Would you be interested in being a part of the Our Generation team? I was like, are you kidding me? And they paid you $25 a story. I remember that was a big deal for me. And I mean, by the way, this is 20 years ago. $25 was like 100 now. And I went down to 1111 Bull Street. That's the address of WIS Television in Columbia, South Carolina. And I remember, oh geez, I walked into the newsroom, and all these people that I'd grown up watching, Like they're all like there at their desk. And we worked on these stories over like a year or two. And I did a story on a guy named Mike Fanning. Mike Fanning was my AP government teacher in high school. And I think I pitched it as, this is like one of these really cool teachers that brings the lessons to life. And then a few months later, I get this call. They're like, hey, that story you did on Mr. Fanning, we entered it into the Associated Press competition for education reporting, and it won. And I went to the banquet with my younger brother and my mom in Cashiers, North Carolina. And that was the first time I remember looking around at a room full of journalists and storytellers, and I remember thinking, oh, you can actually like get paid and make a living? Like telling stories and asking questions? Like this is a thing? I suffered from imposter syndrome for probably up until about 6 years ago. Yeah, because I mean, listen, not to sound whatever. From the beginning, when I was like, a one-man band in Columbia, South Carolina, like I used to one-man band live shots. But even back then, I remember thinking, I think my dad instilled this in me without even knowing it. My dad didn't go to college. He was born in a prison in West Virginia, federal prison, because my grandma, she ran numbers, she ran liquor, like she was a badass. And so he grew up with quite the complex, as you might imagine. Did some time in the military, took a job at the post office when he was very young, worked third shift for 34 years. And it's when he got ready to retire, his bosses were like, oh, Melvin, you got about 9 months of paid leave. Because my father didn't take sick days, didn't take vacations. Like, worked holidays because you got just worked. And so I saw that growing up. My mom at one point, school teacher, picked up a second job, working at a pharmacy. And so I grew, my grandmother was an elementary school custodian for 35, 40 years. And we would go and see her pushing a mop and sweeping. So that instilled in me this work ethic that I didn't even know I had until I got in the local news and people would be like, you've been here for 14 hours. I was like, yeah, I've got a story I'm pitching for tomorrow. I'm doing, but I just, early on, I was determined to outwork everyone. Like I wasn't maybe gonna be the smartest or the most connected, go to the best school, but you weren't gonna outwork me. My first day on today, it actually goes back to weekend today. And I was working in Washington, D.C. I was the weekend evening anchor there. I was reporting during the week, and one day they called from 30 Rock, and they were like, hey, could you come up in a few weekends to read the news on a weekend today? And I just remember being just awestruck. And to be a part of one of the most venerable in all of television. I mean, it's a show that's endured more than 70 years. And so, more than a decade ago, to be invited to be a small part of it, I mean, it doesn't take much for me to get emotional. By the way, I do think the fact that we do spend so much time outside of work, I think that helps us on the show. And that wasn't always the case at the Today Show. Right now, we all genuinely enjoy each other's companies. I won't show you this for a variety of reasons, but we have this text thread that is constant, that's filled with a lot of gifts from Roker. He loves a gift. It's very odd. It's very, very strange. But it's we're constantly encouraging each other, checking up on each other. And because we all have children that are of similar ages, a lot of the commercial talk during the show, it's about our kids, showing pictures and videos and telling funny stories and weird. So it helps that we're sort of all in the same boat, right now in life. I think one of the things that's been, for me at least, since it was announced, most special, because you don't really appreciate all of the sacrifices your parents make until you have your own kids and you start sacrificing. And knowing that, I focus on quality, not necessarily quantity. I'm gonna miss some stuff. You know, I coach my son's basketball team. I've missed a few practices this season. I've missed a few games because of work stuff. But when we're together, like, I'm here. I'm as present as humanly possible. But it is hard. My son, he landed his first role in the school play, and Lindsay's there now at like the orientation for the new actors. But I'll be there for the play. It's already on the calendar. My daughter, as you know, she's in a play in January, her first. It's already on the calendar, Friday and Saturday. I'll be there. So I try to plan. And unless something's big, I try not to disrupt family plans. I mean, there are other little things there are these things called love boxes. So like every morning in the car, I send them a message. And so when they wake up, when I'm not here, every morning, they lift the top of the box and they can read the message from Dad that particular morning. And usually it's like some sort of motivational, message, or it's a picture that we took like the day before. So it's like, I'm not there, but I'm there. The best thing that's ever happened to me personally and professionally is marrying Lindsay Zarniak. She gets it. She doesn't just get me like as a person and as a husband. She understands the business. Like if we've got plans and something comes up last minute and we've got to change them, she's like, I get it. You got to go to work. Okay. That's not always the case with folks in our business. She understands it because she does it. Her father did it. Her father was the executive editor at USA Today. He wasn't around a lot of weekends. And so she's always gotten it. And that has served me very, very well. I say yes a lot. I say yes a lot. And sometimes I don't even realize how much I'm saying yes until 2 weeks later, she's like, you said yes. You said it was okay. I was like, I don't even remember the conversation. No, I mean, I'm not one to dole out like marriage advice. I mean, we've been married very happily for 13 years. I think one of the things that's worked well for us is we each have our areas of responsibility. She's the best mom that I've ever, just watching her in action is amazing. Not juggling their schedules, juggling her schedule, juggling my schedule, and always being totally present. I'm just, I think one of the things that's worked for us, especially since we've had kids, is I follow instructions very well. Years ago, I had a boss who told me in a performance review, she was like, you're coachable. That's one of the things that makes you an asset to the newsroom. You're coachable. And I think in marriage, I've been coachable. And God bless her, because she puts up with a lot. Like when your husband's getting up for work at dark 30 and he's not always that quiet, and sometimes the phone rings in the middle of the night, or she has put up with a lot for a long time. If it's a normal morning, there's no breaking news, or I don't have a big interview. If it's a normal morning, I am usually up, usually 3:45, 4 o'clock. I get up. The object in the morning is to not awaken my wife, either one of the 2 children, or the puppy. So if I can get out of the house without doing that, that's a win. And not to brag or boast, but I win about 90% of the time. When I don't win, it's bad, because I usually hear about it on the car ride in. She's like, your daughter's up. Or Miles is like, the puppy's barking. What did you do? So I get up. I've got it down to a science now. I can usually get, from the time I'm out of the bed, I can usually be in the car under 25 minutes. So the night before, whatever I'm wearing, I put it out. In the morning, I'm up, got my water, take my multivitamin, shave, shower, back out, in the closet, changed. I grab my water, I put in my electrolytes, and throw it in the bag, grab my headphones. Don't judge me, but I have this face mask that I put on in the car that really, really helps me. And I'm off. And that's kind of the morning routine. Then I get to the dressing room at 30 Rock, I make candles. I light one of my candles in my dressing room. I know this is gonna sound weird, and I've been told over the last few months how weird this is. About a year ago, my therapist was encouraging me to, like, find a new hobby. And he was like, well, what do you enjoy? I was like, what do you mean, what do I enjoy? Like, I jog, I play golf, I'm not very good. He's like, well, what about making something with your hands? I was like, haha, you don't really know me. He's like, no, like, you should do something with your hands. Like, you should create. I was like, create what, Charlie? He's like, well, what do you like? I was like, oh, God, I really love candles. Like, I've loved candles for years. He's like, why don't you make candles? It's like, oh, I don't think anybody actually makes candles. He's like, Craig, people have been making candles for hundreds of years. So I go down the YouTube hole and buy some books, and next thing you know, like, I'm churning out dozens of candles a month. And in fact, this is one of mine. I probably pour 3 times a month. It's gotten to the point, though, where my wife has created a space in the garage for me. At first, I was like, oh, this is so sweet. And then I realized that was her passive-aggressive way of saying, please get your candle crap out of the kitchen. It's taking over. But I find the process cathartic. I enjoy it. I do remember, like, being a young man in his 20s, thinking about the kind of life that I wanted to have. Like, I wanted to marry a beautiful woman. I wanted to have, like, children. I wanted to have work that I enjoyed. Like, I knew what I wanted. I knew what I wanted. I had this idea of it. And then you fast forward 20 years, and I'm kind of living the life I imagined. And it's exciting, but it's also kind of scary. Like, if you work towards something, you spend literally decades working toward it, and then all of a sudden you get it. And it's like, okay, well, crap, well, now I don't want to screw it up. And that's where I am now. I just don't want to screw it up.